Oh, wow. It's inscripted stone.
In the shadow of the pyramids, archaeologists make an extraordinary discovery.
This oval shape, this is the name of the king, Kha'ifra, the owner of the second pyramid.
They unearth a stone inscribed with a cartouche, an ancient symbol of the pharaoh.
Kha'ifra. This is the most important hieroglyphic sign, and it's dating back to 2600 BC.
The pharaoh Khafra built the second pyramid of Giza. Could this astonishing discovery of a 4,500-year-old stone bearing the pharaoh's name help to answer one of Egypt's greatest unsolved mysteries?
This is really a great discovery.
What happened to the missing bodies of the Great Pyramid pharaohs?
These are cold cases. It's maybe the coldest robbery case in the books.
The ancient pyramids of Giza tower above the urban sprawl of modern Cairo. The pyramids were built 4,500 years ago as tombs for 3 generations of pharaoh kings. The Great Pyramid of Khufu stands over 450 feet tall. Khafra, his son, built his tomb just 13 feet shorter. And Khufu's grandson Mencare built the smallest pyramid, but it's still the height of a 15-story tower block. These tombs are giant fortresses designed to keep the pharaoh's corpses and treasures safe for eternity. The man responsible for preserving these ancient monuments is Ashraf Mohi el-Din, the director of the Giza Plateau. Ashraf is a world-famous archaeologist and knows more about this site than anybody else on the planet. Today, he's spearheading a pioneering excavation that he hopes will transform our knowledge of the pyramids and the pharaoh kings who built them.
Everybody's dreaming to come to see the pyramid. I get the honor to come every day.
Ashraf has dedicated the last 20 years to investigating this vast site. But there's one area that's still shrouded in secrecy, largely untouched by modern archaeologists, until now. Due south of the pyramids is a barren 1 square mile desert landscape. It makes up the entire southern half of the Giza Plateau. It's called the Southern Field. Ashraf assembles a team of over 60 workers to undertake a vast excavation beneath this uncharted patch of desert. Over the course of the next 8 months, they will remove hundreds of tons of sand, dumping it at the base of the plateau.
شباب هناخد معانا كده. Our work actually here to clean the sands step by step, layer by layer, to see what is under the sands.
Nobody knows what secrets lie undiscovered beneath the sands here. But historic excavations across the Giza Plateau have led to astonishing discoveries. West of the pyramids, archaeologists unearthed an enormous cemetery for high officials. To the east, the tombs of Pharaoh Khufu's family, and gigantic processional causeways, with grand temples, including a temple devoted to the Great Sphinx. Archaeologists have even found the remnants of a harbor town, where pyramid building blocks weighing up to 15 tons were delivered on board fleets of ships. But no one knows for sure what lies buried beneath the largely unexplored southern field. As Ashraf's team shift the sands, they unearth a startling discovery just a few inches beneath the surface.
Oh, wow. It's inscripted stone.
They find a beautifully carved limestone block.
It's buried in soft sand. This oval shape, we call it a cartouche. This is the name of the king.
The team are onto something big.
It's inscribed with the name of the king Khafra. Khafra, the owner of the second pyramid. So this means this block dates back to the age of the pyramid.
What connects this limestone block to the pyramid pharaohs? Could this discovery here in the southern field finally shed light on one of Egypt's greatest unsolved mysteries? What happened to the mummies of the pyramid kings, Khafra, Khufu, and Mencare? The bodies of these pharaohs were once entombed inside the pyramids, but have never been found.
It's a place to have his mummy and his treasures, so it should be well secured, well protected.
But keeping the pyramids secure was a formidable challenge.
We know from both archaeological and textual sources that tomb robbery was always a problem in ancient Egypt.
The monuments failed. The first explorers to enter Khufu's pyramid in the 9th century find the burial chamber empty. Khafra and Menkare's bodies also disappeared. Dr. Mark Lehner is a world-leading expert on the Great Pyramids.
These are cold cases. It's maybe the coldest robbery case in the books.
Mark wants to know how these enormous fortified tombs were broken into. He retraces the robbers' footsteps into the Great Pyramid of Khufu to investigate. Khufu built the first and largest great tomb on the Giza Plateau. It's the only surviving wonder of the ancient world.
Here, they built the most perfect, largest pyramid of all time, and they never equaled it afterwards.
It's thought 20 to 30,000 people labored for 2 decades to complete this incredible monument, using enormous ramps to stack up 2.3 million stone blocks.
They did it with such an exactitude that the base is off level only by an inch around the entire perimeter.
This wasn't just a burial tomb. People worshiped the pharaoh's memory here after he died. The pyramid would have looked very different when originally finished. Mark examines smooth limestone blocks at the monument's northern base. These blocks would have once encased the entire pyramid.
This brilliant outer casing was also a line of defense against anybody who would come in to plunder the royal burial. It was one gleaming sheet of stone, and nobody knew exactly where the entrance was.
But robbers did break in. They didn't hunt for the entrance because that would have been concealed by the limestone. Instead, they tunneled right through 100 feet of the pyramid's building blocks until they hit an internal passage. Mark climbs up through the pyramid's grand gallery. These enormous structures weren't just protected from the outside. Inside, there were even more anti-theft devices to negotiate. At the top, Mark finds evidence of an ingenious pyramid locking mechanism.
Thick ropes would have run down these slots. Those ropes would have controlled slabs that would slide down these slots. Boom, 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 to close the entrance into the burial chamber of the pharaoh.
Mark believes that when it was time to lock the pharaoh's body in his tomb, workers used a complex network of ropes to drop enormous granite slabs, sealing the burial chamber. The ancient Egyptians then released 3 even bigger blocks, that slid down the ascending passage before slamming into the end of the tunnel, totally blocking it off. Finally, they concealed the pyramid's doorway under a seamless layer of limestone, making it impossible to tell where the entrance lay. Ancient engineers thought they'd built the perfect pyramid protection mechanism. They were wrong.
The anti-theft measures didn't work. The chamber has been empty since recorded history.
We don't know who carried out this crime, but Mark has a theory about when the robberies took place.
It's my sense that it was done maybe very soon after the pyramid was complete, because those who made the forced tunnel seem to have known how to turn it just to connect with the ascending passage, which is the way up to the king's chamber.
We know from the breathtaking discovery of Tutankhamun's golden treasures that pharaohs were buried with great riches for use in the afterlife. So the pyramid pharaohs' burial chambers would have been rich pickings. But the pharaohs' mummies had no intrinsic value, and the ancient tomb robbers would likely have feared these sacred remains. Ancient Egyptians believed the key to eternal life was to preserve the bodies of the dead. So when thieves ransacked the tombs, they would grab all the treasures buried with the pharaoh. They even opened the coffins to pluck gems and amulets from the mummies. But we know from other Egyptian tomb robberies that looters may have feared the wrath of the dead pharaohs and would have left their preserved bodies behind. So why did all the royal mummies disappear from the pyramids of Giza? And where are they now?
Any Egyptologist on this planet wishing to find a mummy for a pharaoh.
If archaeologists find those missing mummies, it would be an enormous breakthrough in our understanding of these ancient and enigmatic kings.
We don't have a New York Times or a Sunday Times that tells us about these pharaohs. We just don't know how old they were, what they looked like, their personalities. We know these pharaohs primarily from their monuments.
Could the corpses of Khufu, Khafra, and Mencare have been moved and reburied elsewhere on the Giza Plateau to keep them safe from further robbers?
I'm hoping in the future, in our excavation, to find a hidden mummy of Khufu, a hidden mummy of Khafra.
Ashraf believes that this stone, carved with King Khafra's name, is just the tip of the iceberg. What else lies buried in the southern field?
I believe lots of things in the future is waiting for us.
Ashraf's team is now 8 weeks into their pioneering 35-week excavation of the southern field. The more sand they remove, the more extraordinary discoveries they make. Unearthing ancient clay pottery.
They got lots of jars. They put beer, honey, milk, wine, even cheese to be reused in afterlife.
And huge mud brick structures Ashraf believes are the walls of long-buried tombs.
It extended from here to over there. You see my colleague over there?
And where there are tombs, there are bodies. As the team continues to dig, they unearth dozens of burial shafts.
We have more than 50 shafts here. So I'm cleaning one by one.
It's now clear that this unexplored patch of the Giza Plateau was once an important necropolis, a vast cemetery dating back some 4,500 years. Who was buried here? Many of the shafts are either empty or unfinished, but some
Oh my God.
still contain remnants of burials.
This burial chamber maybe 3 meters inside, 7 pillars.
One particular shaft astounds them.
Wow!
This shaft leads to an interconnected network of underground chambers.
I think there is many chambers to explore.
It's an extraordinary discovery. This mysterious network of chambers is a mass grave.
Loads of remains of mummies, skeletons, bones, and skulls. This is one of the bandages which was used to wrap the body.
Could these tombs contain the missing bodies of the pyramid pharaohs? Some skeletons are ruled out because of their size.
Oh my God, it's a burial for a baby. I'm working more than 20 years now as an archaeologist. This is for the first time for me to discover a burial for a baby. And there is a beautiful mosque.
In one hidden corner of the tomb network,
Wow! Wow, 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 wow.
Ashraf makes another spectacular discovery.
A mosque with a golden sheets. Wow! A golden finger! I can see the nail. Oh my gosh! He still has a hair. Skull with the hair. The whole coffin was covered with sheets of gold.
These golden shards once formed part of an ornately gilded coffin.
I believe he got a high rank to have these golden sheets on his coffin.
Such liberal application of gold would have been reserved only for the wealthy elite and high-status Egyptians. And to find an elaborate burial amongst the scattered remains is a surprise for the team. They must now analyze the body to investigate who was buried inside this golden coffin. Could these even be the remains of a great pyramid pharaoh? Astonishingly, this wouldn't be the first pharaoh's body to be found in a humble mass tomb. Dr. Colleen Darnell has devoted her career to studying Egyptian beliefs about death. She investigates a spectacular collection of mummies that could shed light on why the bodies of the pyramid pharaohs weren't found inside their enormous tombs. These mummies date from Egypt's New Kingdom, a time some 1,300 years after the Giza pyramid pharaohs. In the New Kingdom, pharaohs no longer advertise their burials with giant pyramids. Instead, they conceal their tombs, carving them deep underground in the Valley of the Kings. It was in this valley that the New Kingdom pharaoh Tutankhamun and his golden treasures were found. But the final resting place of these pharaohs' mummies wasn't so final.
This is the mummy of Ramses III. You might think that he was found in his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. But over 100 years after he died, his burial was removed and his mummy was rewrapped to be interred in an unmarked tomb.
Inscriptions on the linen wrappings allowed archaeologists to identify the body of Ramses III. And he wasn't the only pharaoh to be removed from his tomb and reburied. Tutmos II, believed by some to be the pharaoh from the Bible's Exodus, was buried with him. So was Seqenen-Rata, a king whose mummy suggests he came to a gruesome end in battle. There were many more pharaohs in that unmarked tomb, spanning some 4.5 centuries of Egyptian history.
Most of the kings of the New Kingdom were buried together in that unmarked tomb.
Why were these great pharaohs removed from their tombs and reburied together? And could the same fate have befallen the pyramid pharaohs, Khufu, Khafra, and Mencare? Dr. Colleen Darnell hunts for clues to solve the mystery of why dozens of pharaohs were removed from their original tombs and reburied in an unmarked grave. Could this ancient papyrus hold the answer?
One of the more remarkable documents to survive from ancient Egypt is a transcript of the confessions of a tomb robber.
The papyrus was long ago torn down the middle. The two halves now live in different museums. But by bringing the pieces together, Colleen can decode the ancient confessions of a new kingdom tomb robber named Amenpanefer, who broke into the tomb of a pharaoh named Sobekemsaf II.
We took our copper tools and we broke into its very inner chamber. And we know that they're going through the mummies themselves because they talk about a piece of gold jewelry at the neck of the king.
Amenpanefer admits to digging a tunnel into the tomb of the pharaoh. Once inside, he took as much gold as he could carry. But he was caught. For his crimes, a brutal punishment, sentenced to death by impalement. This tomb robbery and others like it alarms New Kingdom authorities. Their pharaoh's mummies, so sacred to the ancient Egyptians, aren't safe. The authorities take action.
In order to safeguard the royal mummies, they were moved, rewrapped, and buried together in an unmarked tomb. We know that the plan worked. By moving them from the Valley of the Kings to an unmarked tomb, they survived for thousands of years.
If all of these kings were moved to an unmarked tomb, could the same fate have befallen the Great Pyramid pharaohs, Khufu, Khafra, and Mencare? Could their bodies have been moved and buried in an unmarked grave? And could those graves lie here in the southern field? Ashraf's team has cleared up to 32 feet of sand. Their work reveals the vast scale of this cemetery.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tombs over there. Those tombs were completely covered with sand.
The most impressive tomb they find lies at the far edge of the site. The tomb is an incredible limestone structure. Detailed engravings cover its walls. One hieroglyph is familiar.
So, Kha, F, Ra. It was the same cartouche in the block we found in the excavations here.
Ashraf now believes the block of limestone bearing Khafra's name may have once formed part of this beautifully carved tomb. But this tomb doesn't belong to the pharaoh himself.
The hieroglyphics here tells about his title. Web Nisu, Kha Efra, Hemneter, the priest. So this guy, he was the priest of the temple of Khafra.
This was the burial chamber for a high priest. This priest would have worked in the temple attached to Khafra's pyramid. The temple was built as a place of worship to keep the pharaoh's memory alive after death. The discovery suggests that this necropolis was no ordinary cemetery. It was a burial site for high-ranking officials who worked in the very heart of Giza.
To find such a quality of hieroglyphics like this dates back for 4,500 years, this is really a great discovery.
Further study of this tomb could not only shine a light on the life of Khafra, the Great Pyramid King, but also those who worshipped him. 11 weeks into the dig, further excavations reveal another strange shaft. This shaft is carved almost 10 feet deep into the rock.
Those blocks, they are covering the entrance of the burial chamber. It means it's intact.
Ashraf sends site inspector Ahmed Ez down to help clear the blocks.
انا ده اتعورت يا ضغوف.
They lift the last of the enormous 80-pound blocks that covered the entrance to the burial chamber.
Nearby Ahmed, I can see there's something there. Maybe there's something from wood. I'm not sure yet.
It's a coffin.
At the bottom of this newly discovered burial shaft in Giza's southern field, Ashraf is inspecting an exquisitely painted coffin.
You can see the face, his lips, his nose. It's well detailed. I'm speechless.
This coffin is an extraordinary, one-of-a-kind find.
If you have a look here, we have the beautiful Anubis, the guardian of the tomb here.
These markings protect the owner's body so that he can flourish in the afterlife. And this coffin even has a false lid,
Wow!
an extra line of defense.
It's a cover above a cover.
In fact, coffin after coffin are being discovered scattered all across the excavation site. Some are buried in shallow sand.
إيه ده أحمد؟ خشب؟
يكون خشب
خشب.
متقوت، yeah.
The team decode the markings on the coffins.
It's like your wife is giving a birth. I wish I can hold this coffin between my arms. He's my baby.
The coffins were buried on top of and inside the Old Kingdom tombs. But while the tombs may date back to the time of the pyramids, the caskets inside are from a much later period. This style of wooden coffin, carved and intricately painted to look like its inhabitant, did not exist when the pyramids were constructed.
It's much later than the pyramids time.
The decorations, the motifs of the scenes,
It's a style of late period.
The coffins of the southern field date from the late period, the term given by archaeologists to a time 2,000 years after the Old Kingdom pharaohs. Why do these graves lie amongst the tombs of their ancient ancestors in the shadow of the pyramids? The timescales are enormous. The pharaoh Khufu built the first Great Pyramid around 2500 BC. A further 1300 years passed before the rule of the boy king Tutankhamun. And the late period coffins unearthed in the southern field came another 700 years after even King Tut. In fact, these Egyptians lived almost as close to smartphones as they did to the pyramid pharaohs. It's a remarkable twist to the tale. The southern field appears to be a cemetery on top of a cemetery, created 2,000 years apart. This burial site is a window into an astonishing chapter of Egyptian history. This site was once an important Old Kingdom necropolis, with limestone and mud brick tombs covering the hillside. But the cemetery's peace was shattered. 2,000 years later, the late period Egyptians suddenly began to reuse the necropolis, carving fresh shafts and reopening ancient burial chambers, burying their dead on top of and inside the ancient tombs of the Old Kingdom Egyptians. The discoveries here lead Ashraf, director of the Giza Plateau, to propose an incredible idea. Could these late period Egyptians have played a role in the disappearance of the bodies of the pyramid kings, Khufu, Khafra, and Mencare?
Maybe the late period people found the body of one of the pharaohs and moved it to some place else. Maybe there's a mummy, a great discovery for a pharaoh, was waiting for us here.
Although late period Egyptians lived 2 millennia after the Great Pyramids were built, They had an obsession with the ancient pharaohs who built them.
These people, they were worshipping the pharaohs from all the kingdom.
Why did late period Egyptians have such a fascination with these ancient pyramid pharaohs? Dr. Colleen Darnell is a world expert in decoding ancient texts. She believes the walls of a lesser-known pyramid, 9 miles south of Giza, in Saqqara, could reveal the reason late-period Egyptians idolized the pyramid pharaohs, and may even have sought to protect and preserve their royal mummies. Saqqara is an ancient cemetery. It neighbors the Giza necropolis and built around the same time as the Great Pyramids. 17 pharaohs are buried here. Colleen investigates the Pyramid of Unas. It was built by King Unas, who lived just 100 years after the Giza Pyramid pharaohs.
The exterior of the Pyramid of Unas is pretty eroded, but on the inside, it's remarkably well preserved.
The interior of Unas's pyramid is covered with mystical symbols. These are the pyramid texts, magic spells designed to help the deceased achieve immortality in the afterlife. These spells also reveal why late-period Egyptians may have gone hunting for the bodies of Giza's pyramid kings. Colleen Darnell decodes ancient spells carved into the walls of the Pyramid of Unas.
One of the spells begins, "Hail King Unas." And then it says, "You have not gone away dead, you have gone away alive." He's achieved eternal existence in the afterlife.
These spells don't just grant the pharaoh immortality, they're also a roadmap to becoming an all-powerful god.
It says, "The one whom he desires to live, he shall live. And the one whom he desires to die, he shall die." The spells of the pyramid text describe how the king becomes a god in the afterlife.
These texts reveal that pyramids weren't just burial chambers, they were god-making machines. No pyramid texts were found inside the Giza pyramids, but Colleen thinks that's because the architects never carved them into stone.
It's entirely possible that the pyramids at Giza would have had pyramid texts on papyrus scrolls included in the original burial, but all of that material is now lost to us.
The pyramid pharaohs built their enormous tombs to become gods in the afterlife. And 2,000 years after their deaths, that's exactly what they'd become. They were now gods to the late period Egyptians. The late period marked the dying days of native Egyptian rule. Between 664 to 332 BC, Egypt was under attack from Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians. In the empire's final decades, late-period Egyptians returned to Giza. They looked to the pyramid pharaohs, Khufu, Khafra, and Mencare, for protection in the afterlife. These were now their gods, and the late-period Egyptians wanted to be buried beside them.
Late period Egyptians idolized Khufu, Khafra, and Mencare.
That's why they want to have their tombs nearby the pyramids. They believe the pyramids, pharaohs, they are gods.
The late period Egyptians worshipped the pyramid pharaohs as gods. So if they did find the bodies of the ancient kings left behind by looters, they would have wanted to preserve and protect the royal remains. Just like the mummies of the New Kingdom pharaohs, rewrapped and reburied near the Valley of the Kings. Could the late period Egyptians have moved the royal mummies to their own necropolis in the southern field to keep them safe? After 12 weeks of intensive excavations on the southern field, Ashraf's investigation enters a new phase.
Yalla Ahmed.
The team will now begin to open the coffins found around the site.
Wow! It's a mummy, but it's not for a tall or a big guy. Maybe he's 15, 16. He didn't have enough time or money to afford a big burial for him.
Ashraf works with expert osteoarchaeologist Dr. Amira Shahin to examine the bones excavated from the network of tombs beneath the southern field.
We have another clavicle.
But there is one burial in particular that Ashraf is keen for her to investigate. Can Amira's analysis finally reveal who is buried in the golden coffin? Will the body reveal evidence of their status and a reason for their elaborate burial? Could this even be the body of a pyramid pharaoh, reburied by late-period Egyptians?
According to the shape of the skull, these tiny bones, so this most probably a skull of a female. She died when all her teeth are present, so she's really young.
This is no pyramid pharaoh. But the bones do reveal a remarkable ancient practice.
This is not normal.
Amira finds a substantial hole just above the right eye. The hole is unusually smooth.
This is the surface of the bone, it is not broken. This hole happened before death. It had been made by a physician.
This smooth circular hole suggests that this skull had undergone an operation, ancient surgery.
These people get a medical health. 600 BC, we have a medical health for medium class people. And this, for me, it's something new.
These bones might not be those of a pyramid pharaoh, but they're an important discovery, revealing physical evidence of ancient surgery in a civilization known for some of the earliest surgical procedures. What of Khufu, Khafre, and Mencare? Can Ashraf's excavations reveal evidence to help solve the mystery of what happened to their mummified bodies? And what role, if any, late-period Egyptians played in their disappearance? Incredible evidence may finally provide the answers. Evidence from inside Menkare's pyramid. The enormous monuments of Khufu and Khafre tower 260 feet above the smallest pyramid on the Giza Plateau. But Khufu's grandson Mencare still built a tomb that towers over 200 feet tall and weighs in at 600,000 tons. In the hunt for the missing pyramid pharaohs, this could be the most important monument of them all. While the other two great tombs have been open to modern explorers since the beginning of recorded history, the entrance to Menkare's pyramid was buried deep in the sand until the early 19th century, when archaeologists finally dug down to access the burial chamber. Inside, they found a mysterious wooden coffin. The coffin now resides at the British Museum, and the inscriptions are worn and difficult to read. Archaeologist Dr. Lehner is a world-leading expert on the pyramids of Giza. He examines a copy of a drawing made almost 200 years ago.
This is the wooden coffin found in 1837. It's inscribed for Mencare as pharaoh, and it says, O Osiris Mencare, king of Upper and Lower Egypt. They cause that you will exist like a god without enemies.
The text states that this coffin contains Menkare's mummified body. It reveals that he hoped to become a god upon death, just like the other pyramid pharaohs. But there's a mystery. The coffin is wooden and shaped like a human, This style of coffin is identical to the late period burials, being unearthed by Ashraf in the southern field.
It's named for Mencare, but this is not his original coffin. Everything about this suggests that it was put into the pyramid 2,000 years after Mencare died. And this is very strange. Is this a reburial of Mencare some 2,000 years later?
2,000 years after Mencare was first locked into his pyramid, late period Egyptians entered the tomb, perhaps themselves hunting for the pharaoh's body. They likely found the burial chamber desecrated from robbers, and maybe they found his body too. But Mencare was a god. They couldn't leave his sacred body unprotected. Instead, they rewrapped the mummy and placed it in a new coffin, holding a fresh funeral for Mencare, restoring his body into the pyramid he built.
We know at this period they revived the memories of these kings, and in this case, apparently, redoing Mencare's burial at this time of Renaissance, when they're reviving the cults of these long dead pharaohs.
Mencare's body wasn't found inside the casket, but the coffin itself is evidence that a pyramid pharaoh was moved by these late period Egyptians and restored into his ancient tomb. A god reburied 2,000 years after he died. Could the same fate have befallen the other pyramid pharaohs, Khufu and Khafra? There's one way to get answers: find the missing bodies. We now know that the vast southern field was an important burial site for these late period Egyptians. And Mencare's coffin is evidence that late period Egyptians did indeed go looking for the ancient pyramid pharaohs to protect and preserve their mummies. This huge expanse of desert may offer up a pyramid pharaoh yet.
I will not stop digging here because every day I got more excited to find more things, more finds, more discoveries.
Months of intense digging has unearthed a treasure trove of unique discoveries. From the beautifully carved tomb of a high priest who worked in the shadow of the pyramids, to the shattered golden coffin of a mysterious young woman, the recipient of ancient surgery. And they've found countless other artifacts that reveal extraordinary details about the lives of those who built Egypt's great pyramids and the people who worshiped them.
Since I was a child, I was dreaming to be excavator, to find new discoveries. And I think I'm making my dream come true by being here in this site.
The hunt for the pyramid pharaohs, Khufu, Khafra, and Mencare, will continue.
Maybe in the future, we will find their mummies hidden somewhere around the pyramid, maybe not. But it's gonna be fun to keep looking